Hello everyone, thank you for watching this video. In today's video, we will be looking at how to set aside a default judgment. We will first examine the discretionary grounds and then we will look at the mandatory grounds. We will further evaluate what the court looks for in exercising its discretion. Where a default judgment has been entered against a defendant, the defendant has the right to apply to the court to set aside the default judgment. The court has a discretion on the Civil Procedure Rule Part 13.3 whether or not to set aside the default judgment. If the court is satisfied that the defendant has a real prospect of successfully defending the claim, or it appears to the court that there are other good reasons to set aside the default judgment. On the other hand, the court must set aside a default judgment where any of the following circumstances arise. 1. Where judgment has been entered wrongly. 2. Where the defendant did file within the time limits. 3. Where the defendant applied for summary judgment or claimant's statement of case to be struck out before the default judgment. 4. The defendant filed or served an admission of liability to pay all the money claimed together with a request for time to pay. And 5. That the whole claim was satisfied before the judgment. These are few circumstances whereby the court's power to set aside default judgment is mandatory. There are no discretion to set aside a default judgment under these circumstances. Where a default judgment has been entered against a defendant, the defendant has a right to apply to the court to set aside the default judgment. The court must have regard to the following. 1. Whether the application was done promptly. 2. Was the overriding objective achieved? 3. Was there any breach of an implied term? 4. What was the seriousness of the breach? 5. Was there any prejudice towards the claimant? And 6. What are the defendant's personal reasons? Let us recap. On the CPR 13, there are two grounds under which the court can set aside a default judgment. There is the discretionary ground and the mandatory ground. Let us recap the discretionary ground. The legal test is where the defendant has a real prospect of successfully defending the claim, or there are other good reasons to set aside the default judgment. Under the mandatory ground, the legal test is where the defendant did file within the time limit, or the defendant applied for summary judgment, or the defendant filed or served an admission of liability, or the whole claim was satisfied before the judgment. A quick tip: the discretionary ground is the most examinable ground in an SQE2 exam. Please take note of this. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share and subscribe for more videos.